Going live. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Restoration Church of Christ Bible Study. My name is Brother Ned Hairston. I'm the pastor here at Restoration Church of Christ. We meet every Wednesday night at 5 p.m. California time to study God's Word. And I'll be reading from the World English Bible. If you have that translation, fantastic. If not, any translation will do. The reason that I use this translation is because it is in the public domain. Many Bible translations have restrictive licenses, and because of those licenses, we can't put them online. Of course, this wouldn't apply if we use the King James Version of the Bible, but I'm probably going to be the only one in the room that understands what the King James Bible is actually saying. So we'll use the World English Bible for now. All right, hopefully that's given people some time to join us. We're reading Exodus chapter 27 tonight. So we've been going through the book of Exodus before this. We did several other Bible studies, the book of Genesis, book of Revelation. We've done Esther, we've done Matthew. And after Exodus, we'll probably be reading the Gospel of John because we didn't have a place to read the Gospel of Matthew together or online. Together online. So we'll be doing that for the Gospel of John. If you were here last week, you'll remember that we've been reading this passage about the tabernacle and its construction. And I gave a sermon on what this means for us. Why should we read all of these arcane measurements of a tabernacle that no longer even exists? If you're interested in the meaning of it and the overarching message of what the tabernacle means for us as Christians, I'd suggest going and listening to that sermon. But this isn't about the overarching message. This is about digging into the nitty-gritty of what the Bible says and what it means verse by verse. So in chapter 27, it reads, "You shall make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square. Its height shall be 3 cubits. You shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horns shall be one piece with it. You shall overlay it with bronze." Now, the 5 and the 5, right? Everything in this temple reminds us of the commandments, right? When we see 5 and 5, or when we see 2 sets of 5, that's to remind us of the commandments. When we see 10 used, that's to remind us of the commandments. When we see, for example, the 4 and 6, right? We see the 4 and 6 used. That's another division of the commandments. Where we have 2 tablets with 5 commandments each, there are 4 commandments that talk about our relationship with God, and there are 6 commandments that talk about our relationship with one another. And so 5 and 5, 4 and 6, these are numbers that represent the commandments. But we also have here the 5 and 5, and it shall be square. Now, this is a very interesting thing. It shall be squared. This isn't terribly interesting about the altar, but keep in mind everything in this temple is square. All right, there are 2 rooms, and each one of them is square. And that's really odd for a tent, right? Where have you ever seen in your entire life a square tent? It's not a very good shape for a tent, is it? You might think of a camping tent, right? It's a triangle, right? You have like a beam that goes down the middle and then a couple posts on the outside, and it's a triangle. Or maybe when you think of a tent, you think of a teepee, and it's a cone, right? It goes from the top and extends on down, and there's an opening in the top because there's going to be a fire in the center of that, and you got to let the smoke out. Or you might think of a larger dwelling, right? A big tent, like a yurt, like the Mongolian yurts. And those have these walls that come straight up, but once again, it's a circle. They come straight up and they have a conical roof. And just like a teepee, it's got a hole in the center to let the smoke from the campfire rise up out of the tent. So if you were going to make a tent, it could be a triangle, it could be a cone shape, basically a circle, or a yurt, also a circle. But a square? Who makes a square tent? The first thing you got to know about God's tabernacle is it's not made for human habitation. It's not made for human comfort. It's made for God. And so it doesn't follow the shapes that we think would make for a good tent, because it's not a good tent by human standards. That's the first thing that it communicates just by its shape. The next thing it communicates by its shape is the rooms being square, right? The temple overall is rectangular. It's two squares put together. But if you're standing in the room is square. And we get the meaning of that from John's revelation, right? The walls are all equal. So each of the four walls are equal. And that is symbolism I was thinking about as I was reading this earlier. What's the symbolism of the number 4? All I can think about is John's revelation, where 4 is used repeatedly as a symbol of God's justice. All right? 4 is used to show equality. We see the 4-square city of the New Jerusalem. Its walls, it's 4 walls with 3 gates. And they are the same length and height, creating this cube shape of the New Jerusalem. And it represents God's justice. So we have the most holy place being square, and the holy place outside of that being another square. And outside of that holy place, out in the courtyard, there's another square, and that's the altar. So the altar too represents God's justice, and it tells us that the measure of God's justice is the 10 Commandments, communicated by its 5 cubits of length and width. Its height shall be 3 cubits. Now, is the number 3 practical, or is it simply the height that it needs to be in order to perform these sacrifices? Well, ultimately, furniture does have to be practical, and I'm thinking that the 3 cubits is a practical number. But you may have a different interpretation, and if you do, please type that into the chat, and I'll read it for everyone to hear. Because we can see these things symbolically and come to different interpretations. And that's a good thing. Our various perspectives do matter. And sometimes God brings wisdom to one and not to others. You know, it's only in sharing that we can find wisdom in God's word. So its height shall be 3 cubits. Verse 2, you shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Horns. That's an interesting adornment, isn't it? Its horns shall be of one piece with it. You shall overlay it with bronze. So the horns are bronze then. You shall make its pots to take away its ashes, and its shovels, its basins, its meat hooks, and its fire pans. You shall make all its vessels of bronze. Why bronze? I mean, this is being written in the Bronze Age, but why not iron? Iron's more durable after all. Well, not in the Bronze Age, it wasn't. You see, bronze is a metal that is not only more durable at this time in history, but it holds up better to heat. If you use iron, we think of it as more durable, but actually when you apply heat to it, it doesn't hold up like bronze does. Bronze is a much better conductor of heat, and it doesn't rust because of the heat. So for an altar for performing burnt sacrifices, bronze is a much better pick. But there's another reason: it's pretty. Iron isn't pretty. When when the Greek Empire collapsed and they went from using weapons of bronze to weapons of iron, people lamented how ugly the new metal was, because bronze is simply quite a bit more attractive than iron. And so there may be a simpler reason than durability or its suitability for use as, as a grate over the fire, but rather it's pretty. You shall make a grating for it of network of bronze. In other words, a grid or a mesh, on the net you shall make 4 bronze rings in its 4 corners. You shall put it under the ledge around the altar beneath, that the net may reach halfway up the altar. You shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. Its poles shall be put into the rings. Now, why overlay? Why not just make them of solid bronze? Well, remember, they have to be able to pick it up and carry it. You can't carry solid bronze poles. Its poles shall be put into the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the altar when carrying it. You shall make it hollow with planks, and they shall make it as it has been shown to you on the mountain. You shall make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side, southward, there shall be hangings for the court of fine twined linen, 100 cubits long for one side. Its pillars shall be 20 pillars, 100 cubits. That means that each one is 5 cubits. Right? Once again, we have this repetition of 5 and 2. And their let's see. Its pillars shall be 20, and their sockets 20 of bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets shall be of silver. Likewise, for the length of the north side, there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, and its pillars 20, and their sockets 20 of bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. For the width of the court on the west side shall be hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. So the court is twice as long as it is wide. So while we had this tabernacle that in the interior of it, right, you're in a room that is square. Go into the next room. Well, really only the high priest goes into the next room, and that room is square. But on the outside, it's long. And so is the court. The width of the court on the east side, eastward, shall be 50 cubits. The hangings of the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. For the other side shall be hangings of 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. So now I'm thinking the 3 is meaningful here, because we have the altar that is 3 cubits high, and here at the entrance now we have 2 sides that are 3 cubits, that are 15 cubits, with the 3 pillars. So the 3 is somehow symbolic here. And it's tempting to say that it's symbolic in a Trinitarian way. But keep in mind, there's no Trinitarian, there is no Trinitarian symbolism in the Torah. So the number 3 here doesn't take on Trinitarian meaning. So my question is, what is the symbolism, if there is any? I'm just going to leave that there for you to research. You might look up what the number 3 symbolizes in Judaism, and we could find some meaning there. But because we're reading the Torah, we're reading Exodus, we don't want to read Trinitarian meaning into it. So verse 14 here. No, wait, I think I did that one. Yes. So verse 16, for the gate of the court shall be a screen of 20 cubits of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen, the work of an embroiderer, their pillars 4 and their sockets 4. All the pillars of the court around shall be filleted. I wonder if my Kindle here will give me a pronunciation of that word. Oh no. No, it will do something screwy. All right. The pillars shall be filleted with silver, their hooks of silver, and their sockets of bronze. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, and the width 50 throughout, and the height 5 cubits of fine twined linen, and their sockets of bronze. All the instruments of the tabernacle in all its service and all its pins, and all the pins of the court shall be of bronze. You shall command the children of Israel that they bring to you pure olive oil beaten for the light, to cause a lamp to burn continually. In the tent of meeting, outside the veil which is before the covenant, Aaron and his sons shall keep it in order from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever throughout their generations on behalf of the children of Israel. So there will always be a light burning in the tabernacle, and there will always be priests attending to that light. And it's a testament before the Lord. In other words, it's there as a testament of the people's faithfulness to God. Now, I had mentioned before about the squares, right? You have the square interior of the most holy place. You have the square interior of the holy place. But when you get out into the courtyard, it's also doubled. It's 2 squares. It's doubled. And this will be mirrored in the construction of the temple, where the temple courtyard is also doubled. So it is also these 2 squares. And if we have this idea of 5 and 2 being the symbol of God's justice, right? If we have the square representation of God's justice, then the courtyard is this weird sort of thing. It's reaching out, right? It goes beyond the square to reach out. And in Jesus's day, the courtyard was divided. There was the courtyard for men, there was the courtyard for women, and the courtyard for Gentiles. And the reason it was divided this way is that for men to uphold the commandments, the ritual purity requirements of the covenant, well, it was easy to do. And I say for men, for women, for Gentiles, for Jewish men, for Jewish women, and then for Gentiles. For Jewish men to uphold the covenant is relatively easy to do. For them to purify and go into the temple courts is an easy thing to do. For women, nature is working against them to uphold those purity laws. And so for women to uphold those purity laws is a little more difficult for them to do. But for Gentiles to do it is nearly impossible. And so the idea is not how far you are absolutely from God, but how close can you reasonably get? And the construction of the courtyard is such that it is reaching out to all people, no matter how difficult their journey may be in coming to God. If you can't take one step towards purity, God is still reaching out for you. Even though you're a Gentile, even though you don't even know what is right, you can't take that one step. God is reaching out, and that is the symbolism of this courtyard. Now, the temple would be destroyed, and so would its courtyard, because just like the most holy place where sits the seat of God's throne on earth was never enough to contain all that is the creator of heaven and earth. Just like that throne could never contain God, so too could the courtyard never contain all that is God's love, all that is God's mercy. Just like God is infinite, so is his love, so is his mercy. And that is why the doubled courtyard reaches out. It's meant to convey that message, not through a single word, just by its geometry. And in that courtyard, you'll see a light that's always burning. Because if you want to come to God, God's going to keep the lights on for you. Chapter 28. Bring Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him. If you've forgotten, this is being spoken to Moses by God. Bring Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him near to you from amongst the children of Israel, that he may minister to me in the priest's office. Aaron with Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are phrased as pairings, right? Aaron and Nadab, Abihu and Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's son. Now that's interesting because I read this in the New English translation earlier, and that one only has 4 of them. And I was thinking, well, that's just like Noah's Ark. He calls them 2 by 2. God is calling them to this, and it gives us this language that's almost like Genesis, pairs them off, right? All right. Aaron's sons, you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and beauty. You shall speak to all who are wise-hearted. Now, this is interesting because Aaron is going to get these priestly robes. And you'll see in churches, some preachers will wear what's called vestments, right? They will wear priestly robes. Well, in other churches, like here, I just dress like it's any other day. And this is because there are two schools of thought on the nature of preachers, the nature of pastors, the nature of clergy in the church. Some see it as a separation. There's the clergy and then there's the laity. But in churches like this one, there's no separation like that. We are all equals. Paul put it in this language that you must either consider everyone as in Hebrews, right? In the book of Hebrews, everyone is a priest. But in Corinthians, no one is a priest. In 1 Corinthians, Paul makes it a point that there are no priests in the church. No one is above anyone else. But in Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews, who is not necessarily Paul, though it was traditionally thought that it was Paul, probably not. The writer of Hebrews makes it a point that everyone in the church is a priest, and Jesus is our high priest. So there are clashing interpretations of the priesthood. We, of course, consider that regardless of whether you consider us priests or not, we are all equal. In other churches, they consider the pastor or the priest or the preacher to be of higher status, and so they give them vestments, just like Aaron is wearing. We're not of Aaron's priesthood, even if we are priests. We're not of Aaron's priesthood, therefore we don't wear vestments. So, we're going to see something a bit odd here. You shall speak to all who are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they make Aaron's garments to sanctify him, that he may minister to me in the priest's office. These are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a fitted tunic, a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and his sons, that he may minister to me in the priest's office. So if you're thinking that you need priestly vestments, think of it this way. Does your pastor wear a turban? Those are the biblical priestly vestments. Do they wear a bunch of gemstones on their chest? Those are the biblical priestly vestments. No. They usually wear a sash of some sort, right? But not this. And that tells me that these churches that do wear priestly vestments, they don't particularly care what the Bible has to say, because it tells us quite clearly what priestly vestments should look like. They don't wear that. All right. A robe, a fitted tunic, a turban, and a sash. Well, they just wear the sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and his sons, that he may minister to me in the priest's office. They shall use the gold and the blue and the purple and the scarlet and the fine linen. They shall make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen, the work of the skillful workman. It shall have 2 shoulder straps joined to the 2 ends of it, that it may be joined together. The skillfully woven band which is on it shall be like its work, and of the same piece of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twined linen. You shall make 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the children of Israel, 6 of their names on the one stone, and 6 of the names that remain on the other stone, in the order of their birth, with the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet. You shall engrave the 2 stones according to the names of the children of Israel. You shall make them to be enclosed in settings of gold. You shall put the 2 stones on the shoulder straps of the ephod, to be stones of memorial for the children of Israel. Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders. For a memorial, you shall make settings of gold and 2 chains of pure gold. You shall make them like cords of braided work. You shall put the braided chains on the settings. You shall make a breastplate of judgment. The work of the skillful workman, like the work of the ephod, you shall make it of gold, of blue, of purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen you shall make it. It shall be square and folded double. A span shall be its length, and a span its width. You shall set in it settings of stones, 4 rows of stones. By the way, there's 12 of these in total. And if you're thinking that's not quite square, I don't blame you, because that means each one of these stones is rectangular and not square. All right, you shall set in its 4 rows stones. A row of ruby, topaz, and beryl shall be the first row. The second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and an emerald. And the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a chrysolite, an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be enclosed in gold in their settings. The stones shall be according to the names of the children of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet, every one according to his name. They shall be for the 12 tribes. You shall make on the breastplate chains like cords of braided work of pure gold. You shall make on the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and shall put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. You shall put the 2 braided chains of gold in the 2 rings at the end of the breastplate. The other 2 ends of the 2 braided chains you shall put on the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in its forepart. You shall make 2 rings of gold, and you shall put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate on its edge, which is towards the side of the ephod inwards. You shall make 2 rings of gold, and shall put them on the 2 shoulder straps of the ephod underneath in its forepart, close by its coupling, above the skillfully woven band of the ephod. They shall bind the breastplate by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it may be on the skillfully woven band of the ephod, and that the breastplate may not swing out from the ephod. This description has led some scholars to claim that an ephod is in fact a jockstrap. I'm not sure that I follow that. I think it must be quite a bit larger. But that gives you an idea. It's joined at the top, across his shoulders. It's joined at the bottom, around his waist, so that when he walks, it doesn't go thud, 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 thud. And the Torah has been quite wordy in describing exactly that. Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment on his heart, where he goes into the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. You shall put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim. And I tried looking up what these mean. No one knows what they mean. Whatever it is, it's been lost. But it does say, and they shall be on Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel on his heart before the Lord continually. Whatever the Urim and the Thummim are, they're used for probably casting lots upon this breastplate. Somehow, the breastplate and the Urim and Thummim, Urim and Thummim, somehow these 3 objects are used together to determine God's will. And specifically, God's will for the 12 tribes of Israel. So I'm thinking they're used kind of like a Ouija board. But I could be wrong. Could be that Urim and Thummim are kind of like dice. You know, we see people casting lots, and lots are dice. But that's the trouble. They could be just about anything. We don't know the exact nature of how Aaron performed this divination, only that he did it in accordance with, this description. But that's not so unusual. there's quite a lot in this description that is simply not practical. It doesn't give us a guide to reconstruct the tabernacle or its practices. But it does give us a guide to understand the meaning of the tabernacle. So, verse 31, you shall make the robe of the ephod olive blue. It shall have a hole for the head in the middle of it. It shall have a binding of woven work around its hole, as it were the hole of a coat of mail, that it not be torn. Okay, so the hole in the head, and you're basically going to reinforce it. On its hem you shall make pomegranates of blue, so little bulbs, and of purple, and of scarlet, all around its hem, with bells of gold between and around them, a golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, around the hem of the robe. It shall be on Aaron to minister. And its sound shall be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out, that he not die. How is the sound of bells going to keep Aaron from dying? I don't think the sound of bells, I don't think this is meant to be taken literally. The sound of bells is not going to prevent Aaron from dying. For one thing, it does show that he's dressed properly when he goes into the holy place, where no one is following him, by the way. He's going in there alone. How do you know he's in there and he's okay? Well, you hear the bells ringing. How do you know that he was properly dressed when he went in? That he didn't just decide to phone it in today. Maybe he decided not to shave, like I sometimes do. Well, because you hear the bells. If he was going to be lazy about it, he wouldn't have worn the bells. Somehow I think that the bells and the pomegranates are a bit of work to get going in the morning. So in that way, we know that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, even though we can't see him. Verse 36, you shall make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it, like the engravings of a signet, holy to the Lord. You shall put it on a lace of blue, and it shall be on the sash. It shall be on the front of the sash. It shall be on Aaron's forehead, and Aaron shall bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall make holy in all their holy gifts. It shall always be on his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. Now, this is kind of weird, right? I'm reminded of Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and the first wizard he describes is Rincewind, and Rincewind has this big red-brimmed hat, and it says across the hat, wizard, with 2 Z's, so you don't really take him seriously. But he's a wizard because he's got the big red hat, like a wizard. Well, Aaron's a priest because it says right there on his turban and on his sash, holy to the Lord. It seems a little silly, doesn't it? But it does serve an important purpose, because it signifies that he will take personal responsibility for things being done right. That the offerings that are being given will be given in a way that is proper. Why? Well, it says right on his hat, he's holy to the Lord. He's the one who takes responsibility for it. And it's there so that people can have confidence that their sacrifices are being done properly. They brought their sacrifice in good faith, right? With the intention of doing things properly. But do they really know everything that needs to be done properly? Maybe not. But Aaron does. It's his job. He does this literally every day. So they get the assurance that it was done right. But Aaron has the responsibility, just like Moses has the responsibility of making the decisions for the people of Israel, right? When they have questions of law, they take them before the elders. And when the elders can't figure it out, they take it before Moses. And Moses takes it before the Lord. Aaron takes that responsibility. If there's something irregular, he takes that responsibility. In a sense, we still do this today. Our high priest, of course, is not Aaron, but is Jesus. And our rituals are not animal sacrifices. They're communion, the Lord's Supper, and baptism. But who takes responsibility that those are done properly? Well, in a sense, we are each priests, as Hebrews says. But really, the people who take responsibility are the overseers, right? The elders of the community, just like in Moses' day. Aaron, the overseers, they're the elders, they're the ones that take responsibility for making sure things are done correctly. When I was baptized, I was not baptized correctly. So I went down, right? I was lowered into the water, and I was lowered with one hand on my nose and the other hand right here. But when I was lowered, and you can see now, I have a tendency to lose this hand, and this hand came up. And so it didn't go into the water with the rest of me, but it went into the water as I came up. And so there was a question among the elders of the church: was I baptized properly? And did it count? Was I really baptized? And the elders decided that because it was my intention in faith to be baptized, because I had accepted Jesus as my Savior, because I had devoted myself to the Lord, and because the baptism was done in good faith, that the baptism was proper, even if it wasn't done quite correctly, that the baptism was still valid, even though it wasn't, well, proper. But the elders took that responsibility. And in a sense, they're not taking responsibility in the same sense that Aaron is. He's wearing the bells to make sure he doesn't die. He is, on pain of death, doing things properly. But Jesus paid that price for us. And he is our high priest who does everything properly because he knows that we won't. We'll make mistakes, even when we're doing things in good faith. On Aaron's forehead, it says, "Holy to the Lord." We can be sure that the high priest is doing things correctly. We can have faith, and we can just do things in good faith because the high priest will make it right. Verse 40, You shall make tunics for Aaron's sons. You shall make sashes for them. You shall make headbands for them, for glory and for beauty. You shall put them on Aaron your brother, and on his sons with him, and shall anoint them, and consecrate them, and sanctify them, that they may minister to me in the priest's office. You shall make them linen pants to cover their naked flesh. They shall reach from the waist even to the thighs. And that's not very long, really, from the waist to the thighs. Those are shorts. They shall be on Aaron and on his sons when they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near to the altar to minister in the holy place, that they don't bear iniquity and die. This shall be a statute forever to him and to his offspring after him. This is actually where we get the rather strange ritual of Mormon holy underwear, right? That they wear holy underwear as established in Exodus. They're boxers. And quite importantly, they're boxers without a fly in the front, because the whole point of them is that they don't come loose, that they cover their nakedness. So if you ever wear a skirt or a dress, or in my case, a kilt, you might be aware of the worry that you might be a little indecent. And in this time, Aaron is wearing a robe. All right, it's open at the bottom. And so there may be some worry. What if Aaron, what if the wind catches that robe? Just like, what if the wind catches your skirt or your kilt? Well, they're going to wear boxers to make sure that they remain decent. All right, we're going to call this here tonight. And next week, we'll start in chapter 29. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can type them into the chat. We're going to go through chapter 29 all the way through 31 next week. At least I hope so. Because in chapter 31, Moses goes down from the mountain. Or, excuse me, in chapter 32, Moses goes down from the mountain. And that will have to be a story unto itself. So 29 through 31 next week. Once again, this has been the Restoration Church of Christ Wednesday night Bible study. We meet every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock California time to study the Word of God. Come back at 5 o'clock next week if you can make it. And until then, may God's peace be with you.